The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest room Ambassador had ever seen. It stretched so far that he could barely see the walls on the other side. Floating platforms carried delegates from 12 different alien species, each one stranger than the last. Some had scales. Some had crystals growing from their bodies. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Stood alone on the human platform. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. He had trained for this moment. Earth had sent him because he never showed fear, even when he felt it deep inside his chest. The High Arbiter floated forward on his platform. His name was, and his body was made entirely of blue crystal. When he spoke, the crystal pulsed with light. "The human species wishes to join our defensive pact," said. His voice was cold and flat. "This pact has protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not accept weak species. We do not accept species that cannot fight." Nodded, he had expected this. "Tell us," continued, "what military strength does your species offer? What warriors will you bring to our alliance?" Took a deep breath. "We offer our Marines." A strange silence fell over the hall. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Finally, a massive creature moved forward. It was standing nearly 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in hard shell like a beetle, and its head had 2 huge eyes that never blinked. Its name was, and he was the High Commander of the Guard. "Marines," repeated. The word sounded strange coming from his clicking mouth. "We do not know this word. Explain. Are these warriors born into a special class? Are they modified at birth to become fighters?" Shook his head. "No, Marines are ordinary humans who choose to become soldiers." "Choose?" Another alien spoke now. This one was from the hegemony. He looked like a lizard that walked on 2 legs with green scales and yellow eyes. "You mean they are not selected based on genetic quality, they simply choose?" "Yes." "Interesting." Leaned forward on his platform. "And how long do you train these Marines? Surely many decades. Perhaps from childhood, yes. Our own warriors begin training at birth and continue for 40 cycles before they see combat." Felt every eye in the room turn to him. This was the moment. This was what he had come here to say. "Basic training for a Marine takes 13 weeks, he said clearly. The hall went completely silent, could hear his own heartbeat. "I do not understand," said slowly. 13 weeks, this is some kind of initial testing period, yes, before the real training begins." "No," replied. 13 weeks is the full basic training. After that, we hand them guns and grenades and send them to fight." The hall exploded with noise. Aliens shouted from every platform. Some laughed. Some made sounds of anger, was shaking his head so fast that his scales rattled. "This is a joke," shouted. "You mock this assembly. 13 weeks is nothing. It is less than nothing. Our children spend more time learning to eat properly." Raised one crystal arm and the hall fell silent again. He floated closer too, his blue light pulsing faster than before. "Ambassador," said, "I will ask you once more. Perhaps there was a translation error. How long do your Marines train before combat?" Did not look away. 13 weeks, approximately 91 Earth days. "And then we give them weapons and send them to war." Stared at him for a long moment. "You are either lying or your species is insane." Smiled for the first time. "Perhaps we are insane, but we have been fighting wars on our planet for thousands of years. We have learned that time is a luxury we never had. When enemies came, we could not wait 40 cycles to train our soldiers. We had to fight with what we had." Made a sound like grinding rocks. "Impossible. A warrior cannot be made in 13 weeks. Combat requires years of muscle training. Tactical education requires decades of study. Your Marines must be weak. They must die in every battle." "They do die," admitted. "War is not kind to anyone, but they also win. They win against enemies who train for much longer. They win because they are taught something that cannot be learned in 40 cycles. And what is that? Asked. Looked around the room at all the alien faces watching him. They are taught that failure is not an option. They are taught that their brothers and sisters depend on them. They are taught to adapt, to survive, to never give up. He paused. Your warriors train for decades because you have decades to spare. Humans never had that luxury. We learned to make warriors fast because we had no choice. And now, those warriors are the most dangerous soldiers our planet has ever seen. Shook his massive head. Words, these are just words. Anyone can make speeches. Then let us show you, said. Send observers to watch our training. Watch what happens when ordinary humans enter boot camp. Watch what comes out 13 weeks later. Then tell me if you still think we are weak. The hall fell silent again. Could feel the aliens thinking, considering his words. Finally spoke. Very well, Ambassador. We will send observers. But I warn you, if this is some kind of trick, humanity will never be welcome in this alliance. Bowed his head. It is no trick. 13 weeks from now, you will understand exactly what a human marine can do. He stepped back on his platform, his heart still pounding. The first step was done. Now came the hard part. Now he had to prove that everything he said was true. The sun rose red over the training moon of 442b. Sergeant Park stood at the edge of the parade ground, watching her recruits run through the mud. They had been running for 2 hours. Some of them were crying. None of them had stopped. Behind her, the alien observers sat in a covered viewing area. There were 15 of them from 5 different species. They had been watching for 11 weeks now, taking notes, recording everything. Did not care about them. She cared only about her recruits. This is painful to watch, muttered Commander. The lizard was drinking something blue from a metal cup. These young ones can barely stand. Their bodies are weak. Their movements are sloppy. How can you call them soldiers? Did not turn around. They are not soldiers yet. They are becoming soldiers. Becoming made a rumbling sound. The commander had been watching every day, never missing a single training session. In our culture, you are either a warrior or you are not. There is no becoming. That is where we are different, said. She finally turned to face the aliens. Her face was hard and her eyes were sharp. In human culture, anyone can become anything. A farmer can become a general. A teacher can become a killer. All it takes is the right training and the will to change. She pointed at a young woman struggling through the mud. The woman fell, got up, and kept running without making a sound. That one said, her name is, 12 weeks ago she was studying books at a university. She had never touched a weapon. She had never been in a fight. She spent her days reading poetry and drinking tea with her friends. Laughed, a scholar. You are training a scholar to be a warrior. This proves my point. She will never survive real combat. 2 days ago, continued, ignoring him, Private scored 94% accuracy in live fire exercises. She completed the obstacle course faster than anyone in her group. In hand-to-hand combat, she broke the arm of a recruit who was twice her size. The aliens went quiet. Howe asked, his voice was different now, less mocking, more curious. Walked toward the viewing area and stood directly in front of the commander. She was less than half his size, but she did not look small. Because we do not train bodies, she said. We train minds. Your warriors spend 40 cycles building muscle and learning moves. That is good. Muscles are useful, but muscles get tired. Muscles get old. Muscles can be broken. She tapped her own head. The mind never gets tired. The mind never gets old. And the mind cannot be broken unless you allow it. She turned back to watch her recruits. They had finished running and were now doing push-ups in the mud. Their arms shook. Their faces twisted with pain, but none of them stopped. We teach them that pain is temporary, said. We teach them that the body can do far more than the mind believes. We push them past every limit they thought they had. And when they break those limits, they realize something important. What? Asked. That limits are just lies we tell ourselves, whistled sharply. The recruits stopped their push-ups and stood at attention. Even covered in mud and sweat, they stood straight and tall, private, front and center. The young woman ran forward and stopped in front of her sergeant. Her chest was heaving from exhaustion, but her eyes were clear and focused. Private said loudly so the aliens could hear. When you first arrived at this camp, what did you think? Swallowed hard. I thought I would die, Sergeant. Did you want to quit? Every day, Sergeant. But you did not quit. Why? Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. Because quitting was not an option. Because the Marines next to me were suffering just like me, and I could not let them down. Because every time I wanted to give up, I remembered that someone was counting on me. Nodded. And now, do you still want to quit? A small smile crossed face. No, Sergeant. Now I want to see how far I can go. Returned to formation. Ran back to join the other recruits. Turned to face the aliens one more time. In 2 more days, these recruits will graduate. They will receive their weapons. They will become Marines. She paused. They are not the biggest warriors. They are not the strongest. But they have something that 40 cycles of training cannot give. And what is that? Asked. His voice had lost its mocking tone. They have been broken and rebuilt. They know exactly how much they can suffer. And they know that no matter how bad things get, they will never, ever give up. Looked at directly. That is what we make in 13 weeks, Commander. That is what your warriors will fight beside. I hope they are ready. Said nothing. For the first time since arriving, they had no response. He simply watched the young human standing in the mud, covered in dirt and sweat, but standing tall. And somewhere deep in his ancient warrior heart, he felt something he had never expected to feel. Respect. The alarm screamed through Ardent Station at exactly 600 hours. Private First Class Lee was eating breakfast with his sister when the first explosion shook the walls. His fork fell from his hand. The eggs scattered across the table, and then the lights went red. What is happening? His sister shouted. She was a scientist on the station, studying alien plant life. She had never seen combat. She had never even heard real gunfire. Was already moving. He grabbed his sister's arm and pulled her under the table. He said, his voice was calm and steady. I saw their ships on the news feeds last month. They have been attacking stations near the border. Another explosion. The floor shook. Somewhere far away, people were screaming. Stay here, said. Lock the door after I leave. Do not open it for anyone except me. Where are you going? Grabbed his sleeve. Her eyes were wide with fear. To find out how bad this is, and to find a weapon. Moved through the corridors like a shadow. The station was chaos. Scientists and workers ran in every direction, not knowing where to go. Smoke filled the air. Bodies lay on the floor. The guards who protected the station were fighting back but could see they were losing. There were too many enemies. They were everywhere. He found his first weapon in the hand of a dead guard. It was an alien rifle, heavier than what he was used to, but a gun was a gun. He checked the power cell. Half full. It would have to be enough. In the next hour, killed 11. He moved through the station like a ghost, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. He was not trying to win the battle. He was trying to buy time. He found other survivors along the way, scientists, engineers, cooks. None of them knew how to fight. All of them were terrified, but when told them what to do, they listened. There was something in his voice that made people trust him, something that said he knew exactly what he was doing. We cannot hold the whole station, he told them. They were gathered in a storage room, 47 beings from 6 different species. We need to fall back to Section 7. The walls are thicker there. The corridors are narrow. We can defend it. Defend it with what? An scientist asked. His scales were shaking with fear. We are not soldiers. We do not have weapons. Looked around the storage room. His eyes moved over the shelves, taking in everything, cleaning chemicals, Metal pipes, gas canisters, power cells. "We have plenty of weapons," he said. "You just have to know how to use them." For the next 3 hours taught the scientists how to fight. He showed them how to make bombs from cleaning supplies. He showed them how to use metal pipes as clubs. He showed them where to hit it to make it fall. He was patient and calm, even when explosions shook the walls. His sister found him setting up a barricade. She was carrying a box of medical supplies. "The guards are all dead," she told him. Her voice was shaking, but she was not crying. "I heard it on the emergency channel. We are alone." Nodded, he did not seem surprised. "Then we fight alone." "How can you be so calm?" Grabbed his shoulder. "You are 24 years old. You have been a Marine for barely 1 year. How can you know what to do?" Stopped working on the barricade. He turned to look at his sister, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not courage. It was something deeper, something that had been burned into him during those 13 weeks of training. "Because Sergeant Park taught me something," he said quietly. "She taught me that the weapon is never the gun. The weapon is the Marine. Everything else is just a tool." He picked up a metal pipe and handed it to his sister. "Right now, you are a weapon too. Everyone in this station is a weapon, and weapons do not give up. Weapons do not surrender. Weapons fight until the fight is over." Took the pipe. Her hands were still shaking, but her grip was firm. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Smiled. It was the same smile he used to have when they were children, playing games in their parents' house. "Help me move these canisters. We are going to make the very sorry they attacked this station." The attack came at midnight. 40 soldiers stormed Section 7, expecting to find terrified scientists hiding in corners. Instead, they found fire. The first bomb took out 12 of them. The second bomb collapsed the corridor behind them, trapping them in the kill zone. The scientists attacked from every direction with pipes and makeshift weapons. It was not pretty. It was not clean, but it worked. When the relief fleet arrived 6 hours later, they found Ardent Station still standing. The invasion force had been destroyed. And in the middle of Section 7, covered in blood and ash, stood a 24-year-old Marine who had trained for only 13 weeks. He was still holding his metal pipe. And he was still standing. Admiral stood on the bridge of the carrier, indomitable, and stared at the wreckage floating in space. Ships drifted in pieces around Ardent Station. Hundreds of them, all destroyed. And the station was still there, lights glowing in the darkness like a beacon of survival. "I want a full report," she said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone on the bridge heard it perfectly. "Casualties, enemy losses, everything." Lieutenant stepped forward with her tablet. She was young, only 26, but she had served with the Admiral for 3 years. She knew when something was wrong, and right now something was very wrong. Enemy forces numbered approximately 300 assault craft, read from her report. Total enemy soldiers estimated at 2,000. Our relief fleet engaged and destroyed 118 craft. The remaining 182 were destroyed before we arrived. Turned slowly, before we arrived. "Yes, Admiral. The station's defenders held for 7 hours before we reached them." The guards looked down at her tablet. Her face was pale. "All dead, Admiral. They fell within the first hour of the attack. The remaining defense was organized by," she paused, "by Private First Class Lee." "One Marine." "Yes, Admiral. He organized the civilian survivors and led the defense until we arrived. Final count shows 182 soldiers killed inside the station, 60 more wounded and captured." Said nothing for a long moment. She just stared out the window at the floating wreckage. "And our casualties?" 12 guards killed, 47 civilian injuries, mostly minor, 3 Marines wounded. Looked up from her tablet. 0 civilian deaths after Private Lee established the defense perimeter. 0. Repeated the word like she could not believe it. A 24-year-old private held a civilian station against 2,000 enemy soldiers and lost no one. Yes, Admiral. The conference room on Ardent Station smelled like smoke and blood. The walls were burned black in places. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor, but the table in the center was still intact, and around it sat the survivors. Commander stood at the head of the table. The great warrior looked different than he had during the training observation. His eyes were dull. His shell seemed to hang loose on his body. He had arrived with the relief fleet, hopping to find his guards alive. He had found only corpses. Admiral sat across from him. Between them sat Private Lee, still wearing his torn and bloody uniform. He had refused medical treatment until all the civilians were checked first. He had refused to rest until every body was accounted for. Now he sat quietly, his hands folded on the table, waiting. "I must understand," said, his voice was hollow. "My guards trained for 40 cycles. They were the finest warriors our species had ever produced. They fell in 1 hour." He looked at. "You have trained for how long?" 13 weeks of basic training, replied. "Then 14 months of active service." 14 months made a sound like grinding stones. Not even 2 of our cycles, and yet you held this station for 7 hours. You killed 182 of the enemy. You saved 200 lives. His massive head shook slowly. How is this possible?" Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and simple. "Your guards were brave," he said. "I saw the bodies. They fought hard. They died fighting. There is no shame in that. But they lost." "Yes, they lost," leaned forward. "Do you want to know why?" Nodded. "They tried to win," said. "They tried to defeat the enemy with strength and skill. When they could not win, they did not know what else to do, so they died." "And you," Admiral asked, "what did you do differently?" Turned to look at her. "I did not try to win. I tried to survive. There is a difference." He looked back at. "Your guards saw the enemy and thought about victory. I saw the enemy and thought about time. Every minute I could buy was another minute for the relief fleet to arrive. Every room I could hold was another room where civilians could hide. I did not need to beat them. I just needed to make them bleed until help came." "But you did beat them," said softly. "You killed almost 200 of them." "Because they expected us to fight like warriors," replied. "They expected us to meet them in open combat. Instead, we fought like survivors. We used traps, we used fire, we used tricks. We made them afraid to go around every corner." A small smile crossed his face. "Fear is a weapon too, maybe the best weapon of all." Was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I have been a warrior for 200 cycles. I have won many battles. I have trained thousands of soldiers." He looked directly at. "I thought I understood war. I thought I knew what made a true fighter." He bowed his massive head. "I was wrong. Your species has taught me something I never expected to learn." "What is that?" asked. Raised his head. His eyes were bright now, filled with something new. "That the strongest warrior is not the one who trains the longest. The strongest warrior is the one who refuses to die." He looked around the burned conference room, at the civilians who had fought with pipes and bombs, at the young Marine who had led them. "Your Marines do not fight to win. They fight to survive, and that makes them more dangerous than any warrior I have ever known." Said nothing, he just nodded once slowly. Outside the conference room window, the wreckage of the fleet continued to drift. A silent reminder of what happens when you underestimate a species that learned to fight in only 13 weeks. 6 months had passed since the siege of Ardent Station. The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled once again, but this time the mood was different. There was no laughter. There were no mocking voices. The aliens who had once dismissed humanity now sat in respectful silence. Ambassador stood on the human platform, wearing his finest formal uniform. Behind him, floating on a massive display screen, were images from Ardent Station. The burned corridors, the bodies, The survivors standing together, bruised and bloody but alive. 6 months ago, I stood in this hall and told you about our Marines. I told you that we train them in 13 weeks. I told you that we give them guns and grenades and send them to war. He paused. Many of you laughed. Many of you called us primitive, weak, insane. He looked around the silent hall. You are not laughing now. High Arbiter floated forward. His crystal body pulsed with soft blue light. When he spoke, his voice was different than before, softer, more humble. The events at Ardent Station have been reviewed by every species in this assembly, said. We have studied the recordings. We have interviewed the survivors. We have analyzed every moment of the battle. He turned to face the gathered delegates. What we found has changed our understanding of warfare forever. Commander rose from his platform. The warrior looked stronger than he had in months. He had spent the time since Ardent Station studying human military history. He had watched every recording of human battles he could find. He had learned things that shook his ancient beliefs to their core. I asked permission to speak today, said, because I owe humanity an apology. When your ambassador first came before us, I believed your training methods were a joke. 13 weeks to make a warrior. Impossible, foolish, dangerous. He turned to look directly at. I was a fool. 13 weeks is not the sum of human training. It is only the beginning. What your species has accomplished is something far greater than any of us understood. He raised one massive arm and pointed at the images on the screen. Private Lee held our station with cleaning chemicals and metal pipes. He led scientists and cooks into battle against trained soldiers. He saved 200 lives with almost no resources. His voice grew stronger. This is not the work of 13 weeks. This is the work of millions of years. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Humans evolved on a deadly world, continued. They had no claws, no scales, no armor, no venom. They had only their minds and each other. For millions of years, they survived by adapting, by learning, by refusing to die when everything said they should. He looked around the hall. When we train warriors for 40 cycles, we are teaching them skills. When humans train Marines for 13 weeks, they are awakening something that was already there. Something that has been building inside their species since the beginning of time. The hall fell completely silent. Private Lee did not become a warrior in 13 weeks, said softly. He was already a warrior. His ancestors were warriors. His entire species are warriors. The training simply reminded him of what he already was. Up in the observation gallery, Sergeant Park watched the ceremony with quiet pride. Beside her sat the newly promoted Corporal Lee. He was wearing his dress uniform, the medals on his chest shining in the light. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat like he wanted to be anywhere else. I still do not understand why they are making such a big deal about this, muttered. I just did what any Marine would do. Glanced at him. You saved 200 lives. You killed almost 200 enemies. You held a station for 7 hours with no backup. She paused. What did you expect? I expected to finish my breakfast, smiled a little. Those eggs were actually pretty good. Laughed. It was a rare sound from the stern sergeant. You have not changed at all, Corporal. Should I have? No, shook her head. No, you should not. Down in the hall, Ambassador was accepting the formal charter of membership. Humanity was now officially part of the Galactic Defensive Pact. They would fight alongside the aliens who had once mocked them. They would protect the galaxy together. But as watched the ceremony, she knew the truth. Humanity had not joined the galaxy. The galaxy had finally learned to respect humanity, and that respect had been earned with blood and fire and the stubborn refusal to ever give up. Sergeant asked. Yes, Corporal. What happens now? Looked out over the assembly hall. 12 alien species, thousands of years of history, and in the middle of it all, a small blue planet called Earth that had produced warriors in only 13 weeks. Now we do what we have always done, she said. We train, we fight, We survive, she looked at, and we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. Far away on training grounds across Earth and her colonies, new recruits were beginning their first day of boot camp. They were scared. They were tired. They did not know if they could make it through the next 13 weeks. But they would, they always did. Because the weapon was never the gun, the weapon was never the grenade, the weapon was always the Marine. And Marines never, ever gave up. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly, the ceremony ended. The aliens bowed their heads in respect, and somewhere among them, Commander made a quiet promise to himself. He would never underestimate a species that could make warriors in 13 weeks. Because those warriors had proven something that his 40 cycles of training had never taught him. The most dangerous fighter in the universe is not the one who trains the longest. It is the one who simply refuses to die.